First contact and invasion. The Caraxian Empire had existed for over 12,000 years. In that time, they had conquered over 300 planetary systems, subjugated dozens of intelligent species, and established themselves as the undisputed masters of their spiral arm of the galaxy. Their warships were massive constructs of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields, each one capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten slag within hours. Their soldiers were bred for combat, genetically enhanced and equipped with weapons that could atomize their targets in an instant. Their technology was so advanced that most species they encountered surrendered immediately, recognizing the futility of resistance. Supreme Admiral Zeth Vera stood on the command deck of the Inevitable Dominance, the flagship of the Caraxian 7th Fleet. His 4 eyes scanned the holographic display that showed their next target, a small blue-green planet in an unremarkable solar system at the edge of explored space. "What is this world called?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that reverberated through his chitinous exoskeleton. "The natives call it Earth, Admiral," replied his intelligence officer, Tresk, "and they call themselves humans. Our long-range scans indicate they have achieved basic spaceflight, but have not expanded beyond their own planetary system. They appear to be divided into numerous nation-states, with no unified planetary government. Their technology is primitive compared to Caraxian standards. They still use combustion-based propulsion for most of their vehicles, and their most advanced weapons rely on chemical explosives and basic nuclear fission." Zeth Vera's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Another easy conquest, then. How many ships will we need to subdue them?" "The standard protocol for a world of this development level suggests a single battle group would be sufficient, Admiral. 5 warships should overwhelm any defense they might muster." "Send 10, Zeth Vera decided. "I want this done quickly. We have more important matters to attend to in the Centauri sector." "Yes, Admiral. Shall we follow the standard procedure? Ultimatum, then demonstration, then full invasion if they refuse to submit?" "Of course, though I doubt they will refuse once they see what a single Caraxian warship is capable of." Zeth Vera waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Begin the approach. I want the invasion fleet in position within 3 solar cycles." The Caraxian Empire had followed this pattern hundreds of times before. It was a simple, efficient process that rarely required significant resources. First, send an ultimatum demanding surrender and vassalage. Then, if the natives showed defiance, demonstrate Caraxian power by obliterating one of their minor settlements. After the demonstration, most species immediately surrendered. If they still resisted, a full-scale invasion would crush all organized opposition within days. The 10 warships of Battle Group Dominance separated from the main fleet and set course for Earth, their massive engines leaving trails of exotic particles as they accelerated to faster-than-light velocities. Within their armored hulls, thousands of Caraxian soldiers prepared their weapons and armor, anticipating yet another easy victory. None of them suspected that this particular conquest would be different from all those that had come before. Dr. Elena Reyes was in the middle of a presentation at the United Nations when the first message arrived. As the lead scientist for the International Space Observation Network, she had been explaining the latest findings from their deep space scanning array when her assistant rushed onto the stage and handed her a tablet. "What is it, Miguel?" she asked, annoyed at the interruption. "You need to see this," he said, his face pale. "It just came through on all frequencies, in every language on Earth simultaneously." Elena looked down at the tablet and felt her blood run cold. The message was simple and direct. To the inhabitants of the planet designated as Earth, "This is Supreme Admiral Zeth Vera of the Caraxian Empire. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our domain. You have 2 of your planetary rotations to surrender unconditionally and accept your status as a vassal species. Resistance will result in demonstration of Caraxian power, followed by complete subjugation. Prepare your leaders to meet our emissaries and formalize your submission." "How is this possible?" One of the UN delegates asked when Alina showed them the message. "We've never had contact with any alien civilization before. The transmission came from a fleet of vessels that just appeared at the edge of our solar system," Miguel explained, checking his tablet for updates from the observation network. "They're massive. Each one is several kilometers long. And they're heading toward Earth." The UN General Assembly erupted into chaos. Some delegates demanded immediate preparation for defense. Others suggested compliance might be the only way to avoid destruction, and still others refused to believe the message was genuine. The Secretary General banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. "Please, we must respond to this threat with unity and careful deliberation. Dr. Rice, what can you tell us about these Caraxians?" Elena shook her head. "Nothing beyond what's in the message. But the technology required to translate their ultimatum into every human language simultaneously, it suggests capabilities far beyond our own. And the vessels our telescopes are detecting are unlike anything we've ever built or even theorized." What Elena didn't mention, what only a handful of people in the room knew, was that humanity had been preparing for this possibility for decades. Since the Roswell incident in 1947, governments around the world had secretly pooled resources and shared advanced technology recovered from crashed alien vessels. The public was told these were merely weather balloons or experimental aircraft, but in reality, humanity had been reverse engineering alien technology and developing defensive capabilities in secret facilities around the globe. The Secretary General's eyes met Elena's, and a silent understanding passed between them. It was time to activate the contingency. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Secretary General announced, "I am invoking Emergency Protocol Omega. Please return to your respective capitals and implement your national defense strategies. We will reconvene in 6 hours to coordinate our global response." As the delegates filed out, Elena approached the Secretary General. "Is it time?" she asked quietly. "Yes," came the reply. "Contact Phoenix Base. Tell them to bring everything online." High above the Earth, the Caraxian battle group entered orbit. From his command ship, Captain Vrex observed the blue planet with disdain. "Primitive," he muttered. "Look at them, still burning hydrocarbons for energy, polluting their own atmosphere. They've barely managed to put a few crude habitats in orbit around their world." His executive officer nodded in agreement. The Supreme Admiral was generous, sending 10 ships. One would have been sufficient. "Their response deadline approaches," Vrex noted. "Have they made any attempt to communicate?" "They've been broadcasting messages asking for dialogue, but no formal surrender. Their planetary defense consists of primitive chemical rockets and a few crude energy weapons. Nothing that poses any threat to a Caraxian warship." Vrex sighed, his breath hissing through his breathing slits. "Then we proceed to Phase 2. Target their largest island settlement for the demonstration. Low-yield plasma barrage should be sufficient. We don't want to damage potential resources unnecessarily. Targeting the island they call Australia. Captain. Weapons locked." Vrex raised a claw. "Fire." The lead Caraxian warship's main cannon glowed with blue-white energy, then released a massive plasma bolt toward the Earth. The bolt streaked through space, a blazing comet of destruction aimed at the Australian continent. But it never reached its target. Halfway to Earth, the plasma bolt suddenly dissipated against an invisible barrier. A ripple of energy spread outward from the point of impact, revealing for a brief moment a shimmering energy shield surrounding the entire planet. Vrex's 4 eyes widened in shock. "What was that?" "Report. Unknown energy field surrounding the planet, Captain. Our sensors didn't detect it until our weapons interacted with it. It appears to be some form of advanced shield technology." "Impossible," Vrex hissed. The intelligence reports indicated they had no such capability. Scan for the source of the shield. Before his crew could comply, multiple new contacts appeared on their tactical display, emerging from hidden bases on Earth's moon, rising from the depths of the planet's oceans, and to cloaking in orbit around the planet. Human warships. Hundreds of them. Not the primitive spacecraft the Caraxians had expected, but sleek, advanced vessels bristling with weapon systems that even Vrex didn't recognize. "Captain," his tactical officer called out, voice quavering, "we're being targeted by multiple weapons locks. The human fleet outnumbers us 20 to 1. Vrex stood frozen in disbelief as the first salvo from the human fleet streaked toward his battle group. Brilliant beams of concentrated energy sliced through space, followed by swarms of self-guiding projectiles that moved with impossible speed and precision. The Caraxian ship shields flared under the assault, systems screaming warnings as energy levels dropped precipitously. Before Vrex could even order evasive maneuvers, 3 of his warships erupted in massive explosions, their hulls shattered by the human attack. "Return fire." Vrex finally managed to order. "All ships, engage the enemy." But it was already too late. The human vessels moved with uncanny coordination, engaging the Caraxian ships from multiple vectors simultaneously. Their weapons seemed specifically calibrated to bypass Caraxian shield frequencies, and their defensive systems easily absorbed the desperate counterattacks from the invaders. In his command center on the inevitable dominance, Supreme Admiral Zeth Vera watched in stunned horror as the tactical display showed his battle group being systematically dismantled. "How is this possible?" he demanded. These humans were supposed to be primitives. His intelligence officer had no answer, watching in silence as another Caraxian warship disappeared from the display. A communication request flashed on the main screen. After a moment's hesitation, Zeth Vera nodded for it to be accepted. The face that appeared was human. A female with dark skin and close-cropped white hair, wearing a uniform adorned with symbols of rank. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured, but there was steel beneath the surface. "This is Fleet Admiral Kara Washington of the Earth Defense Force. Your unprovoked attack on our planet has been neutralized, and your invasion force has been disabled. 7 of your vessels have been destroyed. The remaining 3 are surrounded and at our mercy." Zeth Vera's mandibles clicked in agitation. "This is impossible. Our intelligence indicated your species was barely capable of leaving your own atmosphere." Admiral Washington's expression remained impassive. "Your intelligence was intentionally missiled. For over 70 years, we have known about the Caraxian Empire and other spacefaring civilizations. We recovered your technology from scout ships that crashed on our world, and we prepared accordingly." 70 years? Zeth Vera hissed. "That's nothing. The Caraxian Empire has existed for 12 millennia. And yet here we are." Washington replied evenly. "Your battle group is defeated, and your main fleet is too far away to intervene before we could destroy it as well." For the first time in his long career, Supreme Admiral Zeth Vera felt fear crawling through his exoskeleton. These humans had not only anticipated the invasion, but had prepared a defense that completely overwhelmed Caraxian military technology. Technology that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "What do you want?" he finally asked. Admiral Washington's eyes hardened. "You will withdraw all Caraxian forces from our solar system immediately. You will acknowledge Earth and the entire Sol system as sovereign and inviolable territory, and you will carry a message back to your empire." "What message?" "That humanity is not prey. We are not a species to be conquered or subjugated. We have watched the stars for centuries, knowing we were not alone. When we found evidence of your empire and its practices, we did not announce ourselves or seek conflict. Instead, we prepared. While you saw what you wanted to see, a divided, primitive species, we united in secret and built a defense force capable of defeating even the mighty Caraxian Empire." Washington leaned closer to the screen, her voice dropping lower. "Tell your leaders this. Earth is off limits. Any future aggression will be met with overwhelming force. We do not seek expansion or conquest, but we will defend ourselves and our system with everything we have. And as you've just discovered, that is considerably more than you anticipated." The transmission ended, leaving Zeth Vera staring at a blank screen, the implications of this disaster washing over him like a toxic wave. The Caraxian Empire had just encountered something unprecedented in its 12,000 years of conquest, a species that had anticipated their arrival and prepared a defense that not only repelled them but humiliated them. As he ordered the remnants of his battle group to retreat, Seth Vera knew that nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place for the Caraxian Empire, and humanity had announced its presence to the stars not with a whisper, but with a roar. The counter-offensive. 2 weeks after the failed Caraxian invasion, Earth's Unified Defense Council gathered in the underground command center beneath Geneva. Representatives from every nation sat around a massive circular table, their faces illuminated by the holographic display at the center showing the positions of both human and Caraxian forces across the solar system. Fleet Admiral Kira Washington stood at the head of the table, her white hair gleaming under the artificial lights. The retreating Caraxian vessels have rejoined their main fleet at the edge of the Kuiper Belt, she reported. Long-range scans indicate they're gathering reinforcements. We expect a second attack within days, with a much larger force. General John Wei of the Chinese Space Force frowned. Can our planetary shield withstand a concentrated assault from their entire fleet? Not indefinitely, replied Dr. Elena Reyes, now revealed as the chief scientist of Project Safeguard, the secret international program that had developed much of Earth's advanced defensive technology. The shield was designed to absorb and redirect energy from attacks, but if they bring enough firepower to bear simultaneously, they could eventually overwhelm it. Then we cannot simply wait for them to attack again, declared President Okoro of the African Union. We must take the initiative. Washington nodded. That's precisely what we've been preparing for. Operation Thunderbolt is ready for implementation. The holographic display shifted, showing a detailed tactical plan that made several council members gasp in surprise. You want to attack their main fleet? Asked the European Union representative. That's extraordinarily risky. It's calculated risk, Washington corrected. Our intelligence suggests the Caraxians are still unaware of our full capabilities. They believe the defense we mounted was our maximum effort. They don't realize we've been holding back our most advanced technologies. Dr. Reyes stepped forward. For decades, we've been developing weapons and propulsion systems based on principles that go beyond what the Caraxians understand. Their technology relies on manipulating known physical forces, gravity, electromagnetism, nuclear forces. Ours has evolved to harness quantum entanglement and dimensional phasing. In simple terms, Washington continued, we can strike them where they cannot see us coming, and with weapons they cannot defend against. And if this fails? Asked the Russian Federation representative, her voice skeptical. If we commit our forces to this attack, and it fails, Earth will be vulnerable. Washington's gaze swept the room. If we wait for them to gather their full strength and attack again, we risk everything. The Caraxian Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. They will not stop until Earth is subjugated or destroyed. Now is the time to show them, and the rest of the galaxy, that humanity will not be an easy conquest. After hours of debate, the Council voted. Operation Thunderbolt was approved. Supreme Admiral Seth Vera paced the command deck of the Inevitable Dominance, his claws clicking against the metallic floor. Around him, his officers worked frantically to integrate the newly arrived reinforcements into the fleet's tactical grid. 150 warships, he muttered, the largest battle fleet assembled in 500 cycles. This should be sufficient to crush these upstart humans. His new intelligence officer, Merrick, Tresk having been executed for his catastrophic failure, approached cautiously. Admiral, our long-range scouts report no significant movement from the human fleet. They appear to be maintaining a defensive posture around their planet. They know what's coming, Seth Vera replied. They surprised us once, but they must realize they cannot stand against the full might of a Caraxian battle fleet. Perhaps they're hoping for mercy. His mandibles clicked in what passed for a Caraxian smile. They will receive none. Admiral, called out his sensor officer suddenly. "We're detecting unusual energy readings from the human planet." "What kind of readings?" "Unknown, sir. They appear to be ripples in space-time itself, similar to what we observe before a faster-than-light jump. But different somehow. More controlled, more focused." Zeth Vera felt a flicker of unease. "Show me." The main view screen shifted to show a real-time image of Earth, surrounded by its defensive fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed unusual. Then ripples of blue-white energy began to emanate from specific points around the planet, spreading outward like waves on a pond. "What are they doing?" Zeth Vera demanded. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared across the command deck. "Multiple contacts," shouted the tactical officer, appearing throughout the fleet. They're inside our formation." The tactical display updated to show hundreds of human warships materializing among the Caraxian fleet, not approaching from Earth, but simply appearing, as if they had blinked into existence between one moment and the next. "Impossible," Zeth Vera breathed. "They can't have dimensional phasing technology. No species has mastered that except the ancients." But the evidence was undeniable. The human vessels had somehow bypassed normal space, circumventing the vast distance between Earth and the Caraxian fleet, to appear directly among their enemies' formations. And they immediately opened fire. Human weapons, brilliant beams of coherent energy, swarms of quantum-guided missiles, and weapons that seemed to distort the very fabric of reality around their targets, tore into the unprepared Caraxian vessels. Ships that had survived centuries of warfare disintegrated in seconds, their advanced shields and armor proving useless against attacks that seemed to ignore the conventional laws of physics. "Return fire," Zeth Vera roared. "All ships, engage. Launch all fighters." But the human attack had been perfectly coordinated. They had appeared precisely where the Caraxian fleet was most vulnerable, targeting command ships, communication nodes, and weapon platforms with surgical precision. Within minutes, the carefully organized battle formation had dissolved into chaos. Zeth Vera watched in horror as ship after ship vanished from the tactical display. The pride of the Caraxian Empire, the most powerful military force in known space, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive just weeks earlier. "Admiral," his executive officer reported, voice quavering, "we've lost contact with 30% of the fleet. Our command network is failing. The humans are targeting our communication systems specifically." A noob alarm sounded, and the ship shuddered violently. "We're being targeted. Multiple human vessels converging on our position." Zeth Vera steadied himself against his command chair. "Evasive maneuvers. Divert all available power to shields." The inevitable dominance lurched as its engines strained to remove it from the immediate danger, but the human ships moved with impossible agility, staying with the massive Caraxian flagship despite its best efforts to escape. The view screen showed multiple human vessels taking position around the flagship, their weapons charging for what would surely be a killing blow. Then, unexpectedly, they stopped firing. A communication request flashed on the main screen. With resignation, Zeth Vera accepted the call. Once again, he found himself facing Fleet Admiral Kara Washington. But this time, there was no calm diplomacy in her expression, only cold determination. "Supreme Admiral Zeth Vera," she said, her voice carrying across the silent command deck. "Your invasion fleet has been neutralized. 78 of your warships have been destroyed. The rest are disabled or surrounded. You have no path to victory here." Zeth Vera could only stare in disbelief. The greatest fleet in Caraxian history, defeated in less than an hour by a species that had barely achieved spaceflight by Caraxian standards. "How?" he finally managed to ask. "How is this possible?" Washington's expression remained unchanging. "Your empire's greatest weakness is its arrogance. You've conquered so many worlds, subjugated so many species, that you believe your dominance is inevitable. You see other civilizations only in terms of their visible technology, their apparent military strength. She leaned forward. But humanity has always understood something your empire forgot millennia ago. True strength lies not in domination, but in adaptation. When we discovered we were not alone in the universe, we didn't announce ourselves. We watched. We learned. We prepared. For how long? Zeth Vera asked, his voice hollow. Since your scout ships first crashed on our world in 1947, Washington replied. We recovered your technology, studied it, and realized what it meant, that there were forces in the galaxy that would see us as nothing more than another conquest. So we united, not publicly, but in secret. The nations of Earth maintained their apparent divisions and conflicts as a screen, while beneath the surface we pooled our resources and our brightest minds to prepare for this day. Washington's eyes narrowed. We developed technologies your empire has never imagined, because we approached the universe differently. You sought to control it through force. We sought to understand it through science. And now, here we are. Zeth Vera lowered his head, the full weight of his failure crushing down on him. What happens now? Will you destroy what remains of our fleet? No, Washington said, surprising him. We are not conquerors, Admiral. We don't seek to expand or dominate. But we will defend ourselves and our system with absolute resolve. She straightened, her voice taking on a formal tone. These are our terms. The Caraxian Empire will immediately recognize Earth and the entire Sol system as sovereign, independent territory. You will withdraw all forces and agree to a non-aggression pact. You will share this information with all other spacefaring civilizations. Earth is not to be threatened or invaded. And if we refuse? Washington didn't answer directly. Instead, she nodded to someone off-screen. A moment later, the tactical display on Zeth Vera's command deck updated to show new information. The positions of additional human fleets, not just around Earth, but throughout the solar system and beyond. There were vessels near every major Caraxian colony world, every strategic military installation, even in orbit around the Caraxian homeworld itself. We've had the capability to strike at the heart of your empire for decades, Washington said quietly. We chose not to. We prefer peace to war, cooperation to conquest. But make no mistake, Admiral, if forced to defend ourselves, we will do so without hesitation or mercy. Zeth Vera stared at the display, understanding finally dawning on him. The humans hadn't just developed advanced technology in secret, they had built an entire shadow civilization, a military and scientific infrastructure that had remained hidden from the rest of the galaxy until the Caraxians forced their hand. I accept your terms, he said finally, his voice barely audible. The Caraxian Empire will withdraw from the Sol system and recognize Earth's sovereignty. Washington nodded. Your remaining vessels will be allowed to depart our system unharmed. But remember what happened here, Admiral. Remember what occurs when you underestimate humanity. The transmission ended, leaving Zeth Vera alone with his defeated officers and the ruins of his once mighty fleet. As the surviving Caraxian ships limped away from the Sol system, a new message began to spread throughout the galaxy. It wasn't broadcast widely or announced with fanfare. Instead, it moved through diplomatic channels, intelligence networks, and the secret communications of spacefaring civilizations. Earth was no longer an unknown backwater. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, not an aggressive empire seeking conquest, but a unified species with technologies that could match or exceed those of even the oldest galactic powers. And they valued their independence above all else. In the decades that followed, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted. The Caraxian Empire's expansion slowed, then stopped altogether as other civilizations, emboldened by humanity's example, began to resist. New alliances formed, some including Earth, others simply inspired by the knowledge that even the mightiest empire could be defeated by a determined defense. On Earth itself, the public finally learned the truth about the secret programs that had been developing advanced technology for generations. The unified defense force that had operated in the shadows now stood in the light, its ships patrolling the solar system openly. And in distant corners of the galaxy, other young civilizations looking to the stars for the first time heard whispered warnings from those who had learned the hard way. Tread carefully around the humans. They may seem peaceful, even welcoming, but threaten what they value, and you will discover why so many have learned to fear the wrath of Earth.